Welcome back to the Real Circularity Summit. We are um, just so excited today to have Rebecca Earley join us. I've been following you for, it feels like years and years and years. One of my sort of graphic designers when I was early days in the fashion industry was one of your students, and she spoke so highly of you. And I actually texted her this morning. I said, I'm interviewing Rebecca Earley, and she's like, "Yay!" And beautiful Jess Pafford, if she's out
Yeah.
there.
Send her my best. I remember her. Yeah.
Ah, fabulous. Oh, so good. You must have so many students go through, and it's so exciting to in the education space. I'm in there myself, so I understand it's so nice to see people move into different places.
It's
Well,
fascinating actually. You can track the industry and how it's changing really by looking at where your graduates go and what they end up doing. So it's fascinating. I love staying in touch with my students. Yeah.
oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? Your career it spans like decades in research and innovation and systems, academia, advisory roles, writing, and you're the author of books and co-author of many books as well. I could go on forever. Um, could you share a little bit about your journey into sustainability and particularly circular textile design and what inspired you to first start in this, right?
Yeah. Well, after studying, I did textiles at Loughborough and then a master's in fashion textiles at Central St. Martin's. I was encouraged at that time to make work under my own name rather than sell my textile work into fashion brands, which I think was a really, really good piece of advice. Hasn't made some moments in my career particularly easy, but it has really sort of defined the way that I work, and it also sort of helped the way that I teach other generations to sort of, not be subsumed into the machine, which I think many textile designers are. Um, and I started making products and selling them in stores and worked a lot with stylists and getting stuff on the front cover. So it was a very busy, exciting time. But as the orders grew, I had an agent selling my fashion and textile accessories. As the orders grew and I was hand printing at this time, on Brick Lane in this little studio with a big heat press machine, I would notice all my pores and my nose were black. And I'd blow my nose and there'd be black fluff coming out. And so it changed from being designing something thoughtful and pleasing into making it, into realizing that there was something going on here, very physically in terms of the sort of impact, which made me take the lid off the issues really of pollution. And then at the same time, I got a commission to make radiotherapy treatment gowns for a hospital. And as I researched cancer and complementary medicine and things like that, I kept finding links to textiles.
Mhm.
Uh, and it just grew from there, really. I was very lucky. So, apart from working on my own brand, I was really lucky to teach with a team of people who had just started to look at the environmental impacts of textiles too. And that was in 1996. And so I really got stuck in. I think half my week was spent in my studio, and then half my week was spent teaching. And you know, they were ahead of their time, really, that team of people in looking at environmental impacts from textiles and how design could change it. And the rest is history from there, really. I just started to think, well, I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to come in on this side of things. I'm going to use design and I'm going to use my platform and just see what I can make in a better way.
That's really interesting. And so essentially it was kind of the health issue first and seeing it in yourself, like breathing it in, that
Yeah.
that really was the catalyst. Really interesting.
Yeah, and I think, we might come full circle in this interview, but, it's really the human, mental, emotional, physical, behavioral side of things that I'm most interested in. And really, it's taken a long time to find out how to work on those issues as a design researcher and educator when it's normally the domain of other disciplines, although we do a lot of collaborative work, it's actually taken a really long time to be able to do that kind of work in our own right, or in an equal collaboration with other experts.
Yeah, I can understand that. Everyone's in their silos of I am a designer, I'm a scientist, I am in policy or whatever, and they generally don't all kind of come together until you've got some kind of prowess going on.
I agree.
And with initiatives, you've got like the World Circular Textiles Day 2050. What progress or challenges have you encountered when fostering like global circularity in textiles?
Yeah, well, obviously that seems like a huge statement to try to bring the world together
Yeah.
to have full circularity by 2050. But actually, it was the coming together of many minds over many, many years that created that organization. I don't think you can kind of come up with that from scratch, So first and foremost, it was probably the pandemic that inspired us to make something like this because we were meeting online. So Cindy Rhodes from Worn Again and Circle 8 Technologies, she brought us together for these big discussions because I think people were missing the get-togethers, the conferences, and from that sort of energy, warmth, and dynamism that we found online, we wanted to sort of keep that momentum going and just have a spotlight every year where we come together and think about progress. And we've done that in an era of great sort of criticism around greenwashing and the lack of progress in circularity. So we're but because two of us are academics, one of us is in a way in a material sort of science technology realm, and the other, Gwen, is very much on the sort of industry outreach area. We've been really rigorous at kind of putting content or statements or curating events so that we tackle issues like greenwashing, and what we sort of say, I think we can stand by. But in terms of the ambition and the reach, I mean, because of being invested in the technology that's needed for circular textiles, and because the technology needs scaling
Mm.
and it needs elements like collecting and sorting working out, you're straight away into thinking long term, and you're straight away into thinking collaboratively, because none of these things can be done without funding, without joined up thinking, without flows. So what we realized is we had in this pool of people a huge amount of knowledge that could help us in a way retro engineer a vision. If what we really want to see is as much circularity happening in the right places by 2050, what are the steps that are needed to get there?
Mm.
And that became our mission statement, is to put these sort of like visuals together for these eras, to then sort of say to people, what do you need? What do you need? What do you need? Here's where we think we are on this journey every year. What do you need? What progress have you made? But in addition to that, at the same time, there's been a huge growth in activities in regions, but not so much coming together and looking at that as a joined up set of flows. So I
Mm.
think if circularity is going to work with textiles, we definitely have to understand what natural local resources there are, what local waste streams there are, which are the flows we want to intervene in and stop, but which are the flows which are going to be really useful, and then how can we trade between global regions? So really, if you think about textiles, you have to think globally. It's been brilliant to see different regions create local initiatives and flows, and I think those are at least as important. But in terms of scale, volume, global production on a huge industrial scale, we absolutely need these joined up flows. So it's been a fascinating journey. We have done 4 years, 5 events, including the launch event, 4 years worth of coming together. And yeah, the key findings. I mean, I will be publishing the key findings next year, so I won't preempt that too much. But we've been on field trips to Indonesia. We've looked at issues in the US through events at the UN, and yeah, we've just learned a lot about what each region and continent might be able to do at mass scale. And then the local pictures are very, very, very detailed and very, very, very different.
Get into the role of technology and biobased materials. How do you see that evolving to accelerate circular innovation and the textile industry?
Yeah. So you may have noticed I have company
Yes.
today. Um, Yeah, this is my son actually modeling a bio-based garment from the Herewear project that we've just finished. And this sort of the need to have more bio-based materials made from waste, either agri-waste or textile waste, is huge. You know, I don't need to tell your audience the imperatives for growing this area of our materials palette. But we've got the opportunity to grow it in such a way that's way more thoughtful and appropriate than we were making textiles 100 years ago. You know, we really do. We can engineer these materials in quite extraordinary ways. So now what we understand is that the manufacturing, the processing of materials is where a lot of the impacts are. We used to be able to say it was at the laundry stage, but because the volumes in our wardrobes have changed, it's no longer the biggest impact at the laundry stage. It is at the manufacturing stage. So you can look at every single element of that material from its original resource. And you know, we're insisting that that has to be waste. That has to be, it can't be a crop grown just for a material. I mean, excluding cotton and how we're going to use good cotton in the future, we can't be growing textile fibers on land that can be used for food. We absolutely have to be using food waste or the agri waste or the textile waste that's already we have huge volumes. This is entirely possible. So as soon as you start taking that as your waste resource at the beginning, you've got a number of things you can do to engineer that material. From how it's dissolved to then what happens in that solution to then how it's extruded into filament or fiber or right all the way through to materials. So the projects that we've been working on, like the Herewear project, get us all together with like 15 or so partners to look at all of these steps and to keep testing. Because what we really want to see with bio-based materials, the scale, the drive behind them becoming used is where they can replace things in a really successful way, in a really successful manner. So this shirt, I've actually got it not just on the screen, but in person with me today as well. You know, I
Ooh.
always find this a bit hard. I've just disappeared completely. Sorry about
Literally
that.
disappeared.
That's the rule, isn't it? Put it up to your body.
Yeah.
You know, this is a completely viable shirt for corporate sector that replaces a polyester or even a recycled polyester garment. It's bio-based from waste. And because we have the partners in the project, we were able to do life cycle assessment and look at the improvements. And, you know, I haven't got the graph with me today, but you can find the information and all the results from this project online on the website Herewear.
No, it's fascinating. I love the agri-waste sector. One of our first ecosystem members, he does pineapple fiber waste out in Bangladesh, and it's fascinating to see that not just okay, you can take this waste and there you go. There's actually this processing in between that's really nuanced. You know that he didn't want to use chemicals or anything like that, so he's actually derived a system without any chemicals. It's all completely mechanical. You can
Mm,
Bangladesh, right, do that. There's an economic it's okay in terms of economics there. It
mm,
must have been massively difficult to create this. I know it's really difficult to actually create a t-shirt that like
mm.
that, that actually works, right? From the agri waste.
Yeah, because you're constantly dealing with tiny, tiny quantities, and so then
Yeah.
you know everybody's fighting over the material when it actually gets made. I mean, I've got some lovely samples with me today where you know along the way we were always trying natural dyeing, but really early on we had a big breakthrough really early on actually where we with the wheat straw we realized if we didn't bleach it and we kept the color, we had a really viable, beautiful material to use without dyeing. So we did a lot of over dyeing with natural dyes, again from food waste. But you know, this very gold,
Well,
slinky.
I'll have to put it on your body. You've disappeared again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm getting the hang of it still after all these years. This color and so this is extruded as a filament and not made into a thread. So that saves quite a lot of the processing impacts as well. But so we had to be very careful and straight away think about, okay, because you've only got a small amount of material, what's it best for? So therefore, what does this suggest to you, as a designer, and how will it perform in that context? So we made a gold knitted dress, but we made sure that the dress was multifunctional, multi-size,
Yeah.
could be recycled later on. We just tried to integrate as much thinking as we could. This on the back of every material is the material wheel. I think this is probably for our team at UAL one of the biggest breakthroughs because, like you're talking about your partner in Bangladesh and pineapple, you sometimes get your hands on a bio-based material and you really don't know what's in it or what's happened to it. And
Yeah.
so we did this and that analysis process where we collected together 100 samples and then we analyzed them. And you have to sort of identify what's happened at every stage. And because we've got the benefit of having a group of experts in the project, even if the companies aren't providing us with the information, we can generally work that out.
Yeah.
So we can kind of plot if something has been mechanically or chemically reprocessed, etc. So one of the big breakthroughs with the project was just getting this real clarity around what is bio-based and is it really better? Um, so yeah, that was all of these things I'm going to end up showing you today are all on the Herewear Hub. So again, from a project like this, what's so important is that you share and you share in the most effective way. And I think this is the first time that project has gone through to this really incredible learning hub, which is free to join. You can download tools, you can download the final results of the project, but it really kind of like helps you get going in your region and make the decisions you need to make in your region and not just try to emulate what's happening elsewhere.
I totally agree with that bit as well. Like the locality for us is really important. It's what you do in Bangladesh is very different to what might happen in the UK or in the US or in China or whatever, right? It has to be with a sense of place placed in and an understanding of the locality. It's a super important part that not everyone kind of really goes into in a really deep way, right? I mean, locality must have been really an important part. Like, were you using UK fields, right?
So, well, the partner base was in Belgium, and
Okay.
the network TCBL is French, and we had key partners in Spain as well. Well, you're just all over the place. Look, the thing is, the whole point of these EU projects is you start off with like 15 partners from 10 countries or whatever. Like you've got this opportunity to test in all these different regions. So if you look at that part of the project results, you'll see that we had communities in Italy, for example, which involved the farmers first. So you get the farming community together, you assess what agri-waste is there, and then you get the communities of small companies, textile companies, clothing companies together, and you say, hey, have you met these farmers? Like you actually kind of bring people together. So we had I think you can read, I think there's about 4 or 5 really good case studies of different regions. And you can create and achieve a lot in a small space of time. But I think what really matters is the fact that we were modeling all the time.
Mm.
You're modeling to make tools that can then be shared. So you can say, okay, that's great. Now what can happen so I think we did a London assessment, but we also did one. I can't remember where it is now, and I'll get killed by my
That's
partner for not
okay.
remembering. But I will point you towards the what's on the hub, because basically, because the project was bio-based, local, durable, circular, every tool for that kind of thinking has been shared in a generic way. So you'll find a case study, but then you'll actually find the tool for yourself in a neutral way that you can work with your community. So it really did set out to model some examples and then to say, it's totally up to you. These are the things you're going to need to make it happen in your area.
A real collective intelligence that you've brought together that then is open source, right? Like
Yeah,
a lot of the time, a lot of this stuff is kind of behind a brand or a business. They do
totally.
that, and it's like, okay, we've got IP on this, etc., etc. But this is really radical. In
Well,
fact,
you have to allow the IP because you won't get the involvement from companies unless they do maintain some of the knowledge,
got it.
have a competitive advantage. So the beauty of this, and I think of the beauty of having done it for years and years, like myself and my team largely, is that you understand how to navigate that
Mm,
more. So you say, yes, that is your product. Yes, that is your go ahead, do that, like the shirt.
yeah,
Um, but these are the bits of information we're going to need to share. And you have those conversations really early on. So the EU project documentation is very detailed around things like this. When you bring in a commercial partner, you sort of declare what you're bringing, what you're expecting to leave with.
yeah.
And that you can actually head things off at the pass then if you sort of find that there might be a conflict of interest later on. You sit down and you talk about it earlier. So
Mm,
one thing I'll give you an example around that is we have got design tools from this. We've got loads of different design things, but we've got the Bio 10. You probably know about TED's 10, which have been out a really long time, since 2010. But through this project, we were able to bring out the Bio 10. And, you know, so important to me as an educator to be able to share all of this knowledge, but we had a software company as well. So Circular Fashion in Berlin, Ina Budd's company, have made a digital tool. And you can access a certain level of it, but then you pay to
got it.
go. So, you can't not have a partner like that on a project because you need that ability to disseminate and get the impact and get things happening.
Mm.
But you have to agree up front what parts are behind a paywall and what parts go out. And I think that's fair enough because we know that this is an industry. So, yeah.
It's super interesting. It's and what we're doing as well with business is to create these win-win situations. Okay, especially with the collaboration aspect, we need to figure out how everyone's going to win and interact, and that is an upfront situation. And we're probably doing it in a business sense as well. So it's really interesting to hear. But then that you've got that element that of inspiration to somebody who would be in a locality thinking, what could I do with this agro waste? Okay, here's a whole bunch of tools that I could look at implementing. Fascinating.
Absolutely, because that's what we're trying to see. We're trying to see a change. And how do you create change? Well, you share knowledge, you support each other. Um, yeah, it's a different kind of textile industry we're imagining, isn't it? So we're almost designing the rules as we go along, God forbid, but like it's
Well, the guidelines. I think I mean, leads to this next question, really.
yeah,
It's a systemic change that's needed. And
yeah,
these things that we're both doing and we're all doing is a part of this new system, right?
yeah, yeah.
Relocalized model. And how have you been weaving that in, as you've gone along with these projects?
Yeah. So um when we started, gosh, if we go back to 96, obviously what we were doing was materials based, dyeing, fibers. So much of that hasn't changed. It's still the same question of like, what is the best material I can use?
Mm,
That was the question then. It still is the question now. But as we began to face up to that, the complexity of answering a question like that, you have to start looking at every part of the life cycle, which makes you look at every stakeholder, which makes you want to bring them together to talk, which makes you realize you're doing systems design because you're co-creating solutions. So you straight away are, working together. But it's probably more than that now with circularity. You literally have to think of the system because you're thinking ahead to what happens next. So you're going into the future and then you're working back to the product and the decisions that you're making right now. So, it took us a while to understand what that actually looks like for a company, what it looks like for a consultant, what it looks like for an educator. They're
mm,
all different ways, they're the different parts into doing systems work. So I think you've got to first of all understand what expertise and lens you're looking at systems design
mm.
through and with. Um, and yeah, what can I say? I mean, I think I'm at the tools element and guidelines part of this work in which I'm good at spotting where things might fit because I've got so much experience. I'm like, they put it there, but actually, if they put it there, it would be more effective. So you almost become a bit of a curator when you're doing systems work. It's really helped that I make my own work. I've always made upcycled polyester shirts for the last 25 years. And because I've got this hands-on knowledge of different material types, different approaches, and different problems in the system later on, I probably bring different questions that are more nuanced than maybe others in the field do if they're looking at it as just a system. So I'm both a systems thinker and maker. And that's really important, I think, because you can tell people until you're blue in the face how things should be or might be or could be better. But you've also got to be the expert in change and actually understand change management and practical applications. Some things for people who are interested in finding out more about systems. I mean, the Bio 10 is I'm going to be publishing more about it in 2025, but it changes the 10 quite a lot and starts really with systems. So I think somebody nicked the first card last time I showed these. The first card is design for collaboration, then it goes into design for systems before it goes into the practical things you need to do for design for upcycling. So moving the guidelines around means that you encourage this different kind of thinking that's more aligned with systems thinking. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is there's a load of tools on the website. For example, this one, which is systemic materials innovation. So we've come up with different approaches to getting people to come together and then think in systems around bio-based materials for circularity.
I love that. And it's a whole other lens, right? Like, because mostly I think a lot of people go into the fiber or the fabrication side. Okay, I need a next gen material. I need this and this and this, not looking at the systems lens first, right? Which would make more sense completely.
If you can just find people who work in industry who have long-term thinking ability and incentives. So most people we come up with in industry don't. They have annual targets or,
Yeah, or
or
4 year plans, or 5 years would be a long time, right? In
it
our
would, it would. And of course, what we're really talking about is shoring up the company to be working well in 20 years' time because
yeah.
of the change in materials and flows and people's tastes and regulations. And it's still a struggle to get a complete team together around that, I think, in any company.
Yeah, completely. Well, in any company or just in the industry as a whole, like I call it cathedral thinking, right? Like
Yeah,
we're thinking about things that are way past my depth, like some of the projects like our ecosystem incubator. I'm like, this could carry on past me. It's not mine, right? It's ours, right? And that it's something that could continue to inspire and to sort of have people come together in this collaborative way for a longer period of time. I think that is one of the really most important parts, is to see things past our own
yeah.
distance on this planet.
Absolutely. And I think my service shirt from 2018 is a really nice example, if any of your audience haven't come across it, where I set out to make a 200-year shirt because that's how long polyester as a material can last. And through workshops with different brands, quickly realized nobody was able to think about 200 years. And then we brought it down to 100 years, and even that was a struggle. And then we got to 50. So in the end, we made a garment together with a 50-year lifespan. And the first purchaser is called a fashion, not investor, the word when you give, I can't remember the word, but you see the first purchase as
Like
an
a
investment in the
custodian.
future. Yeah, a bit of like a custodian, exactly. Like I'm making this purchase. It's beautiful, it's expensive, it's luxury. I'm going to enjoy it. But because I know it's part of a circular system, I'm doing the first piece of financing of then sends this into a series of loops that are going to last and serve X number of people over X period of time.
Yeah,
So
I love
so
that. That's why it's not just about the fiber, it's about the actual design and the way it's designed so that it can be modular, so it can be adjustable, and that item could be passed on to another custodian over its use span. Yeah.
totally, totally. So I've got another one of my little tickets to show you, or my tricks to show you, which is about thinking in speeds and actually just taking any company can take one of their products and play the cards. You can find these on YouTube, but play a fast card and then play a slow card and see what changes with that same product. What are you going to have to do as a company to make those products work differently? Of course, a lot of people don't like to see a fast time frame. They think that that's really dangerous and neglectful. But if you look at the data, what we actually have is a lot of products that aren't worn even at all.
Yeah.
So we have to also, like we're making the bio-based materials engineered for certain products and areas and regions, we also need to engineer our designing for time frames because not everything will last. Honestly, I'm really, really, really big on people and what their behaviors are. And in a way, yes, we need behavior change, but we also need to be, as an industry, a lot more considerate around people's needs and desires and pleasures. Because, we are desperately passionate about this area, but I can assure you that 99% of the population will not give the clothing that they buy, use, wear, or get rid of very much thought at all. And we're still in that situation. And this is 30 years of me working in this area because the challenges of life are so sort of maybe even getting harder and really extreme in terms of finances. Fashion remains a pleasure, and we have to tap into that pleasure. So we really have to understand it. And I have watched time and time again as projects have failed because they focus on guilt tripping or behavior change to be better, rather than really thinking from the point of view of the person of what's going to make that person's life better. Because that's people are buying clothes. I won't go on about this, but too much. But I really think we're missing one of the biggest tricks, which is to tap into the joy and the pleasure of fashion.
Yeah, because this is a lot of the problems that we're seeing is because people are saying that depending on whether it's fashion or any other space that I sort of speak to in the industry, oh, the market just isn't there. I'm like, well, we have to understand the market more to be able to then place correct products and materials in front of them, right? That are best suited to their sensibilities.
And I don't think that there's a way necessarily around that. The market isn't ready. I mean, that's relying on a pull mentality, isn't it? And that is the reality for so many businesses, that when they try these circular approaches, they find them expensive, clunky. Of course, they don't align with linear processes. Of
No.
course, they're
Well,
not as
even
cheap.
economics as a whole, right? We could go on about economics for another hour, I think, right?
So what does that make us realize? It makes us realize that companies can't change to be circular, or are most likely to get success from innovating with new spin out companies that do focus on circularity. And that as things shift in politics and economics and social trends, that spin out company is geared and ready to provide a product that's very different from a linear product.
Yeah. As
Um,
I've said from the start is like, let's create parallel brands, right? We know that this is how you're making your money right now. Create a parallel brand at the same time. And then when we have the emergence, then you're ready, you're there. It's not like you have a dying brand then, right?
Yeah, and a culture of thinking, a culture of understanding, the way that the future is going to have an impact beyond the power of the brand.
Yeah, I think that answers our question there about the barriers that are preventing that faster adoption of circular practice. So yeah, we've done that one.
Yeah.
Looking ahead, like when we're looking at our 20 or 30 or 50 years, what innovations or shifts do you believe will have the greatest impact on achieving the fully circular and climate positive textiles?
So many things I could talk about to technology. And in a way, I would love actually the opportunity of talking more about this and all the different technologies that I've discovered in the last 30 years and those that work really well. But I'd love to answer this question talking about AI with you,
Mm.
because this is something that we're hearing a lot about. We might not be using, or we might be using in a really simple form, or we might even be using without knowing it, which is obviously happening a lot. But I really believe that circularity could make huge gains and leaps forwards if it really embraces AI and gets it to work for them in a way that is, I suppose my latest thinking on this is I've been publishing recently. I've been trying it out from a design point of view, and the speed is incredible. And so you then have to think, okay, well, that speed is bad news, really, because what that means is faster, 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 fast fashion. We don't want that. So is this only bad? And then you start thinking, well, where else could the speed actually be useful? So if you start to workshop where AI and its speed and its gains is useful for circularity, you can really begin to see some great potentials. In the way in which we could improve not just design, but the flows of products, the use in particular, matching material types, matching waste with garments, with people who need those garments, and those garments to be a particular way that's engineered particularly towards their needs, tracking, tracing, bringing it back, improving flows. Now, all AI will help with every area of that. But what's really interesting right now, and almost like a provocation for 2025, I think, to some of the brands that you have listening to this session, is if you can bring it in right now in its current form and it saves your designers time,
Mm.
get them to spend their time on doing some R&D work for the company. Invest that time saving, not in growing profits, which we know everybody's under pressure to do all the time, but take it to board level and make a case for using AI for maybe a 2-year period where it's not about improving the profit margins, it's about saving the staff's time to get them to R&D, how they can be more circular, how they can move towards more circular products, better practices, lower impacts, more teamwork, collective action. Because from my point of view, there are so many answers to the problems out there,
Absolutely.
but people don't have the time or the impetus or inclination, i.e., rewards, to
Yeah,
do
KPIs not there.
to do different things. So I'm obviously petrified about how people are going to use AI. I'd love to see legislation come in, but then I've been waiting for legislation to come into the fashion and textiles industry for 30 years. So, it could be a slow one.
Mm.
So, honestly, I think embrace it and make it work for you and be a good user and give it good data. We want loads of young women using it. We want loads of regional intelligent questions coming in, loads of sustainability thinking. Get into those algorithms and start to generate solutions, um, and give the time back to the company in a progressive way.
I love that. And I've always said AI is kind of the intentions we place upon it, and we can have an intentions for the old system of, okay, we're going to continue continuous growth and whatnot, or we can have intentions of creating a more beautiful world, right? Like, and actually using our collective intelligence, and also I could see it be quite good for sort of predicting and predicting systems and different and ways of doing things.
Yeah.
The opportunities are endless with this. I'm totally on board with that, like massively. So
Yeah, absolutely. And for it to not just be in the hands of the companies, but in the hands of the people who want to make more of their clothes. So if you think about AI in our wardrobes
mm,
and in our kind of purses, um, yeah, it's got huge potential. I still feel like I haven't even scratched the surface, but even the surface that I have scratched, I'm like, whoa, mind blowing, life changing. Yeah,
no,
I won't write any more books. I'm just gonna like give it to AI to write, and then I can crack on with some other solutions.
exactly. sometimes you could just put your own life's work experience. We've done it as well. We've placed our book, Real Circularity, into a custom GPT, and we're going to keep feeding it our work so that people can
Really?
just ask it questions. Okay, what about this? What about this? And it's only using that context and that document and not scraping from the rest of the internet, which might be from vested interests and so on and so forth, right? So
Oh yeah, you have to be so careful. I mean, my biggest finding was that, you ask it for a literature review and it's made up nearly all the references, and you're like, oh yeah, I have to change it when I ask it to make sure that these things are real. Yeah.
and yeah, going into the education side, because education is a huge part of what you do as well. How do you approach inspiring this next generation of designers to prioritize circularity? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a life's work for me is the education and curriculum development. I suppose one of the models, apart from the tools I'm always kind of working on and the inspirational material that gets the designers involved and going, is sort of this framing of materials, models, and mindsets. So with the designers that come into university, of course, they want to create the textiles and the products and to give them that foundational base knowledge. I mean, I didn't get taught this when I was studying, but where materials come from and why they're like that, and actually why they don't have to be like that is a really important lesson. But then there's this kind of making sure that we're teaching them about the models that are coming, the way in which things change through economic incentives, political crisis, environmental crisis, and actually the models that are there that are really supportive towards change as well. So we kind of frame things with material knowledge, models and systems, and then mindsets. So yeah.
And throughout your journey, this is my last question. How's your perspective on sustainability and design evolved over the years? Because it does evolve, right? Like when I started, very different thinking to how I am now.
Mm,
And I'm
mm,
sure 10, 20 years I'll be different as well.
mm. Yeah, I mean, I think I saw it as the most creative, innovative challenge that we could take on as designers. Um, and it still is. And a lot of change has happened. But I think that, one of the reasons I'm really interested in um, the regional, local questions is that this is a beast of a machine that we're working with in terms of the textile industry and sustainability. And I spent 10 years educating and training H&M designers in Stockholm in the HQ there. And, you know, so many brilliant people, individuals, passions, interests, intelligence, creativity. And the machine can change, but it changes very slowly. And what I feel positive about is those individuals, whether they're still in the company or whether they've gone on and done many other things, they're taking that knowledge with them and changing things elsewhere. And so I guess my kind of big shift is towards how important individuals can be because they can create the collective actions and the new models that are adaptable and will change. And yeah, I just sort of I was asked this in an education podcast recently, and I think I really shocked the podcast interview because I said climate feminism is it for me now because I'm so interested in like I've said sort of understanding people, but then when you look at sort of the impact that the climate crisis is having on women in particular, and how that, in addition to existing inequalities, is creating even more pressure. The big shift for me has been to understand that we can be more effective by focusing our efforts to particular challenges, and not seeing it as one massive climate crisis, but actually seeing it as a series of challenges some are more suited to your solution, to your way of finding solutions than others. So, it's been a process of understanding the huge landscape, which is why I keep coming up with tools that allow that understanding to start off with, to then, but where do I specialize? Where am I going to make the most change? And so I now focus in on women and leadership and resilience and their ability to change themselves, their families, their communities, and their work experience, whether they're running their own company or they're in a company, because they are the nurturers, essentially, without being sexist. They are bringing up the next generation and keeping the family together quite often too. Actually, that'll sound horrendously sexist to anybody like myself who has a very equal marriage and relationship. I just see so many amazing women in the climate space who are going to burn out and give up and go and do something else, having got 20 years of education and inspiration behind them, and are essentially huge buyers of clothes. So actually for me, this idea of sustainability, change, climate, and then women and feminism is really, really interesting. And then all you've got to do is combine that with AI, and there you go. We've
There
solved
we
everything.
go. We can solve it. We're just like 100,000x the women. I love it.
Yeah.
What a beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, wishing you all success. What we'll do is place the tools in the chat as well, so people here listening can link in to your work straight away. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
Great. So brilliant. Thank you so much. I hope to meet you in real life one day.